I came up with these notions of evidence 1, 2, and 3 in large measure because the great term of art these days in medicine and education, in social work, in almost all of the applied fields, is we are becoming evidence-based. And usually what they mean is that when we introduce something new, or when we defend what we're doing, we can point to a body of published research that supports what we do. And that's what I call evidence sub 1. That's the standard definition of evidence. And as I said this morning in my talk, if we're being honest with each other, there's almost nothing we do that is fully supported by an evidence sub 1, because even in the best of worlds, the types of things we call evidence sub 1 are general claims, general statements that are never sufficient for deciding what to do and how to do it in a particular situation, whether we're talking about medicine or education or engineering. Which doesn't mean then that we read and think about it and then we hold our nose and jump, but that we build into these practical efforts we engage in an ongoing process of collecting data, of measuring what we're doing, of talking to people about how they're responding, so that the evidence sub 1 a priori claims is enriched, supplemented, and transcended by the ongoing process of collecting evidence in the here and now. That's evidence sub 2. And I cited the operations research people before it was called OR that Waddington talked about in the British Admiralty as combining general ideas about logistics and about military movements and about how far subs could go and stuff with rich data about where are the subs right now and where are the shipping lanes, because you had to combine the two. So now you've got two kinds of evidence, two kinds of knowledge. What that still leaves unexplored is it's easy enough to say, yeah, you got to put them together. Well, what does that mean? I mean, just throw them together the way my mom used to make soup. The soup came out fine. But you need a somewhat more, I think, systematic set of protocols to do several things. One, to constantly remind us which sorts of evidence always have to be examined. Because there may be blind spots that we never think of looking at, for example, in college admissions, which is an example of this kind. You only look at the intellectual data like GPAs and SATs or ACTs. And then somebody says, well, you know, there's a body of work that suggests that there are emotional and personological factors like grit, persistence, and then you go on to a few things. I never would have thought of looking there. So in some ways, you need a more of a constant examination of the categories for both looking to findings in evidence 1 and creating new ones in evidence 2. But also, I think you need some methodological notions about how do you put these together. And as I said, there's a growing body of work, quite modern, it begins with Aristotle, on how you put together practical arguments. Because practical arguments, which is what I call what comes out of evidence 3, is very messy, because the evidence that goes into the same decision is a very different sort. Some of it's theoretical, some of it's quantitative, some of it's qualitative, some of it is hunchy, some of it is system 1, it just feels that way, in thinking fast and slow in Kahneman's sense. And yet they're all, not only are they all legitimate categories for practical judgment, you're going to use them whether somebody says they're legitimate or not. Because if Uncle Herbie had a Volvo that was a lemon, that's going to enter into, and you're going to have to think, okay, now how relevant really is that? I know it's important to me. So that's what I meant by evidence 3.